I just wanted to get everybody here today to discuss the best practices. And we have Katie and Mike from Huber today, and you guys are our 4 main framers that do all of our houses each year. Just a little background on Chinburg Builders right now. In 2025, we framed 97 houses, finished last year. So, and we intend to keep that going and maybe even do more this year. So just wanted to give a nice hard reset on framing practices and whatnot. So today we're going to put a couple of panels up here, go through a little bit of installation method with Katie and Mike, go through some installation methods of the windows and the nailing patterns and mid-span blocking that may or may not be required. It's an open conversation that we're going to have today, along with the installation of the windows, the side bucks and taping, etc., through those other methods. So at this point, Katie, did you want to chime in at all? And
Sure. Hello, folks. I'm Katie Gallagher from Huber Engineered Woods, kind of the regional sales manager for New Hampshire and Vermont, and a little bit of the North Shore of Massachusetts. Mike Stevens is with me. Mike is my counterpart in Maine. So when you guys are across the border in Maine, under Mike's purview, but really all of Huber. So thank you guys all for coming. One of the things that we are very focused on at Huber is installation quality and making sure that these systems that we have engineered over the years are really working for you. So feedback from you guys is very much welcome. We're trying to make sure that everyone in this group has a really solid product, good quality, and basically good reviews for all of us, right? You guys want to come back and use our product. You guys feel that it's useful for you, and Jackson finds us easy to hopefully work with to get all these products to work as one. So appreciate that. And we've got some installation instructions for the windows. I think people might have had a chance to review. Installation manuals, which we can email around, or I know we had kind of
share them with me, and we can
conversation on those, just so everybody's up on the most recent. Not that there's been a ton of changes to these products over the years, since 2012 or 2013 when you guys started working with us on Zip-R. So just all here to learn, and all feedback is welcome. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome. So if we can, Kevin and Steve, you'll be my guinea pigs today. Thank you. Thank you for volunteering, except that I volunteered you for the installation methods. But if we can grab 2 of these boards and let's get them up onto the walls for now. And we
setting up volunteers.
Oh, perfect.
And again, I wanted to just add, I know Greg set a good tone. Our tone is just that we sort of we need to fine tune the way we do this, document it so that we all can do it regularly. So so we're gonna have that dialogue about what's the right thing, And I know I think we need to be doing something that is going to change our scope of work, which is going to be probably a bit more intensive on the window wrap detail. So I want, as we're doing it, let's talk about the pros and cons. I was just talking to Ramon, who says, Massachusetts requires more tape than we currently do by a far, which makes me think, and especially based on the comments from this customer, whether or not we should be sealing the edge of that OSB. Katie and I talked extensively about at this house where we've had this customer that's gotten incredibly literate about the code, about manufacturer's installation. Like he's reading, the last sentence in the 4th paragraph of the Huber installation manual says, quote, blah, 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 blah. So we need to find that safe place that we all, nobody's being held liable for not properly installing something to the manufacturer specifications, but it's also some level of reasonableness that's hopefully not going to quadruple your guys' labor costs or labor effort to get our houses done. But again, the goal is all of us together, since you guys are a prime core of framers, to agree that, yep, this is what it's going to look like, and then Greg and I are going to document it and send it around, whether it will be with Huber, but do this, or we all agree we don't need to do that, and that's what our Greg and mine's hope is.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, Adam.
You can make noise now.
I'm going to point out one thing while have this panel on the floor here, that all the zip panels, and you've probably noticed this over the years, but you may have thought it was an oversight on our part, but we have a 4-foot edge and an 8-foot edge that are squared up. So you end up with a slightly proud 4-foot end and a slightly proud 8-foot end. So when you are running your layouts, if you want to put the square corner in one corner and then run so that the flush corner and proud corner always line up, that's to help the foam remain touching, but it leaves a little bit of a gap for the actual wood panel to expand and contract. So you've actually got the proud corner down there. This is the flush end. Just wanted to point that out. It's not something that it's actually designed into the panels themselves. So, yes.
It's not always
Yeah, the
long way.
overhang is supposed to be about an 1/8 of an inch. But if it's off, definitely let us know. If it's more than that, then your layouts are going to be off, and you got to be trimming it. So, per our manufacturer's spec, it's supposed to be about an 1/8 of an inch.
So it's always foam touching foam.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
never wood touching wood.
That's the idea. But we understand the job site reality is that but just to point it out, because sometimes we do get questions if people are trimming off edges. And a little bit on how this is made. So we actually make these panels in Crystal Hill, Virginia, and then send them up to Pennsylvania to be laminated at Atlas, which is our foam laminator. So the rigid polyiso comes, gets laid onto the panels. The glue line that is between the panels and the actual foam is not intended to be permanent. Like, you aren't supposed to be able to leave this out into the weather for 4 months and have the panel and the glue still stick together. Yeah. It's meant to get it onto the wall, and then you guys are putting a lot of nails into this to nail it on there. So it's not intended to be that permanent application. So I'll let you keep going.
Okay, great.
So we realized that having a layer of foam behind your panel is going to be tricky in setting flush nails with this. One of our recommendations has always been nail gun collars. We have some here for you guys to if they match up with your guns. I think they're for Hitachi guns. That's great, but they can be set on the end of your gun to help set that nail flush. The other thing we recommend is inline air regulators. So if you're running off of the same compressor, the nail gun that's going to be nailing off the zip bar or nail guns, to have an inline air regulator so that it doesn't, spike and then drop down. So all that being said, obviously the density of the studs behind are going to play into that as well. So it's always going to be a little bit tricky to get to a perfectly flush nail. This is not, we understand this isn't job site reality, right? That things are going to be,
That one looks good.
That's ideal, right?
that one's good.
That's ideal. This maybe not so much.
The reality is that these edge nails that are overdriven are going to be covered with tape, right? Your seam flashing tape is going to be covering these. For those in the field that we say, we have a technical document if you guys want to review on overdriven fasteners, which is fine. Anything that goes more than halfway through the depth of the panel, or if it misses the framing. If you have a shiner on the backside, would need to be covered. I think you've probably all dealt with the Portsmouth building inspectors who have been saying you need to cover the overdriven fasteners with any fastener on zip with the liquid flash. That is not part of our requirement. That is something that a code inspector can go above and beyond our recommendations. And they have, although recently we've talked with them, I think they've backed off that recommendation or policy. But that is a very common use of our zip liquid flash when nails get driven beyond 1/4 of an inch into a 7/16 panel. You can use a dab of that liquid flash, cover it. You can use a small piece of tape. We now have an even smaller roll of tape, the multi-purpose tape that can cover those. So again, we are not as concerned with overdriven nails becoming an issue for leak or leaking issues so much. It's more structural holding capacity of the nail, and then also just becoming an issue where you just don't have as much shear in the panel when they're overdriven, when a considerable amount are overdriven.
And that wouldn't matter if it was zip, Advantech, plywood, or OSB. So think about it. If you're driving a nail 75% of the way through any panel, how much structural integrity do you think you have? Do you think you could go up to that panel, no matter what it is, and push it off? So the shear values are based on flush, 1.5 inch penetration, and APA and TICO have charts where you could figure out your reduction in shear. Again, like Katie's been saying, we understand you're on job sites, and 100% of them are not all going to be flush, but you could go to this chart that if 50% of them are overdriven, 10%, your shear value goes down by this percent, and you could figure out, is it still within the shear value needed for the wall, or do you got to go back? And the typical remedy is to put another fastener in that's flush. So, cover the one that's overdriven with liquid flasher tape, and then drive another fastener in and keep going. So you're not tearing walls down, you're just having to put an additional fastener in to get that shear capacity back up. So again, it's not pertaining to just zip, it is no matter what the panel is. So I usually like to try and structure it that way, because it's going to be any panel. So
With the zip system, most of the edge panel fasteners are going to be covered with tape. So it's really just those in the field that would be potentially of concern. But more for, again, structural and not necessarily for moisture resistant issues.
Yeah.
And then if you could send around links of where to buy those regulators and the collars and things like that, I want that stuff on hand. And
Sure, we're going to leave a bunch of them here. If they work for the guns that you guys have. Each nail gun is a little bit tricky, but I guess fasteners, this is a good way, kind of segue to pop in now. We do have the actual nail manufacturers. GripRite is starting to realize that more and more people are using the foam-backed systems, right? So they've now got these Speed Spike, which Jackson can get through a local distributor. But the Speed Spike line lines up with a couple of Boss Stitch Max and Fastco guns they have listed on the back. With the Zip R6, you need a 3-inch fastener, as you guys know. If you do ever get into some of the Zip R9 or 12, where you need even longer fastener, the Speed Spikes are definitely an easy way to go on those, and the guns that work with them on the back.
right now, but we love the R6, and we're using installation methods on the inside of the buildings to spray foam higher in neighborhoods and things like that. So it's really, this is our bread and butter.
Yep.
So we want to get really good at this.
For sure. And really our requirements on the Zip R6 is a 3-inch fastener. You need to embed into the framing 1.5 inches, and a .131 shank diameter. No requirement for ring or
You're trying to get us, Katie's making a point of trying to get us to focus on the idea that really, if you're nailing carefully around your edges and your perimeters, you really just need to be paying a lot of attention to your field nails. For those of you that hang sheetrock on your spare time, obviously if you're thinking about that when you're nailing your plywood, the closer you're going to get to your edges, that means whatever you're already doing anyways around a window opening or on a corner is going to be dealt with, as well as anything you're doing here. So if we just moved this last nail down to here, and this nail, make sure it's within the zone here where we're going to wrap that with the zip tape. Just I don't know. That was what I was envisioning. I'm like, oh, it's just like screwing off sheetrock. Then whatever you're already doing anyways, because we're going to be enhancing the wrap on the windows. And Katie brought to my attention that we're probably that on the house that she and I looked at, that we probably aren't putting quite enough tape on the corners, and so I know she's going to review that detail with us. But again, that we can keep the nailing. These lines are all here for a good reason, that they already have them here, and as you probably already know that.
One of the major reasons why we're here today is about the midspan blocking and the requirement of and who, where, what, when, and why. A lot more of Artform's plans are calling out specific shear walls and other items like that. And but I also am in conversations with yourself, Katie, and the architect, a better understanding of the midspan blocking when we have panel edges. And page 17 of some of your documentation has it that it is required to nail every 6 inches on panel seams. So how do we achieve that going forward, and what is code, manufacturer specification, architecture specification? What is the story behind that?
Yeah, so the midspan blocking is really to pick up that nailing pattern, right? So in New England, where we like to sheathe horizontally, you've got 16 on center stud spacing, but a nailing pattern that is supposed to be every 6 inches around the perimeter, every 12 inches in the field, generally. Now, certain areas we're going to have to nail off for wind shear and other things, might be a little bit tighter. So definitely check with kind of the governing code of where you're building. Rye might be totally different than, say, Barrington. So I would just recommend checking in with the local code folks on what the nailing pattern is. But in order to pick up every 6 inch perimeter nail, you would need some sort of blocking here. And this again is not necessarily a zip R thing. This is technically, if you're nailing on any type of wood structural panel horizontally, to really pick up that the nailing code or the code for nailing, you would need to have blocking behind here. So it does, using the zip R kind of calls it out a little bit more stringently. I don't know of many building inspectors that are looking for that, but really if you're following the code to the letter of the law on any panel sheathed horizontally, you would need blocking at the midspan.
And the blocking can either be on edge or flat.
Yep.
So there was some confusion years ago on that. Does it have to be, on this seam, does it have to be going into 1.5 inches, or can they lay them in flat? So it's come out that you can lay it flat in there, and then that helps with doing the insulation on the inside as well, whether it spray foam or fill or whatever.
So I want you to stay like 3/8 of an inch off of the edge of the panel for nailing, so you don't blow out the edge. But so a 2x4 would be more than enough.
Chinburg. So again, the hope is to come up with a consistent specification that we can provide to you guys that either gives you the choice, or we as Chinburg would mandate vertical or horizontal blocks on their edge. That's our expectation. The plans should reflect this more, because one of the things that came to our attention is Holly realizes she needs to be a little bit more prescriptive about what we were supposed to be doing. So she would identify whether or not the blocking needs to be there. The net nailing pattern that Katie just referenced, if you're in a higher wind shear, she's supposed to be checking that more carefully for us, that you've moved that house, if we're building on the coast, it's going to require nails every 3 inches instead of every 6 inches, where the blocking is going to need to be. If there's a shear wall blocking that needs to be incorporated into the wall, most of the time that horizontal blocking we're now putting into the walls everywhere will resolve for that, but please make sure you look at the plans to confirm, because Holly is going to be doing a much more clear job of specifying where those shear walls need to be assembled. And then I guess it's really just up to us to decide whether we're okay with vertical or horizontal plywood sheets.
Correct. It does not matter to me. When I was on site with Ron, we had done the measuring the way that we do it now, with where it lines up, we end up with a piece of blocking regardless. So it doesn't really matter whether you do it vertically or
full wall
you still have a blocking somewhere to be able to hit that.
So now there's not as much concern with how much wood you're putting in, because you're breaking that thermal transfer with the layer of foam in there. So that might account for the
Why it's
change.
coming back.
Yeah.
That's a good point, and that's why we have this here. And then Chinburg Builders is moving more and more towards spray foaming the walls after the fact, so that will add added insulation factor in the walls, and instead of just an R21 fiberglass. So that's another discussion internally that Chinburg Builders will have. Regardless of how we frame it, there's a block in the top if we go vertically, and there's a blocking required at the panel seams. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
no matter which way you orient the panels.
or what is on the actual architectural plans of whether or not it's a shear wall, there is blocking that is required to hit the nailing pattern of every 6 inches. And then there was another excerpt about having to nail it every 3 inches if it's...
If it's acting as your true shear wall, it does get tightened up to either 3 and 12 or 4 and 12 nailing pattern.
So if Holly calls that out on one of her plans, that's the difference of nailing on a normal wall. If it is just a normal wall with a couple of windows that aren't close to the edges, it's a 6-inch nailing pattern across the blocking. And then if it is an actual shear wall, then the nailing is, sorry again, 3 inches or
3 and 12, 4 and 12. Look, we can get into there's a chart in there depending on how much shear she's trying to get out of that wall. So I guess just kind of keep an eye out for a tighter nailing pattern.
okay.
And I do think Holly felt pretty like she owed us the responsibility of being a little bit more clear about which walls needed that tighter nailing pattern. And I'm hoping that we should be able to, as consumers of the plans that we work with Holly to make, that should be clearly noted for you guys as to where you need to be paying attention. So again, this is also just an ask to slow down and take a little bit more time to read the plans carefully, because there is going to be a lot of other things that are going to change, not just about the zip wall or this blocking. There's a lot of stuff that Holly noticed was potentially confusing or not quite current code, or duplicative and giving multiple directions. So look, just take the time as you see your next few sets of plans from her.
And that's a checklist that we like to run through kind of as a pre-construction, just so you guys know before you get on site. I realize you've been doing this for many, many years, and so it's not necessarily a pre-construction meeting right now, but normally we would meet with a crew and say, these are the things that you want to keep in mind, right? Like these are taping details that we would recommend. And if we were to come out and do, quote, an observation report, these are the things we'd be looking for. But again, we're not trying to be the cops on this. We're really just trying to make sure that the product quality is there. It's more for making sure that what gets delivered is kind of meeting the manufacturer's spec.
Roller, you're gonna get chest test. Get the roller, you're gonna get chest test.
Back of my hand is zip approved.
Greg's gonna get mad.
See, it's this easy.
The hand roller has been used for many years.
that's
Yeah.
This is very easy.
And with the roller, this is just our version of a roller. We ask that you use a rubber roller on it and roll the tape. And what that does is get uniform pressure across the tape, where you're not necessarily going to get that with your hand. If there's any wrinkles in the tape, it's going to fold the wrinkle over. And there's enough acrylic adhesive on the back that it should seal. We call them fish mouths for some reason. I don't know why, but basically it looks like a V in the tape. And if it's not rolled, it actually turns into a funnel, so water sheets down the wall. If it's on the top side of the tape, it hits the funnel, goes to your seam, and then you go, hey, I've got water coming in my building. And a lot of times when that happens, you can go back and look, and you can see that it wasn't rolled, and that V didn't fold over itself, or that wrinkle didn't fold over itself. If it looks like somebody wadded up the tape, just cut it out, and then put a new piece in, and then just overlap it 3 inches on each side. Sometimes you just can't roll it out. If it's,
You're saying don't use those rollers, or you get another one?
no, it's use any rubber roller. Because a lot of the feedback I get is, well, Huber's going to come out and they're going to look for the Z's on it. And if there's no Z's, they're not going to warrant it. That was frankly a result of going on job sites and having a bunch of people there, especially multifamily, where you got the building owner, the rep, the architect, the water consultant, the window manufacturer, the GC, the subcontractor, and the guy down the street just looking for free donuts. And we're talking about like what we're doing today, put the tape on, roll the tape. And the building owner looked at the GC and said, did you roll the tape? And then you look at the subcontractor and he goes, yeah, I rolled the tape. And you got a $20 million building, and the guy wanted more of than, yeah, I rolled the tape on it. So that's how we came up with the Z's. It was just a way to find out visually real quick if it had been rolled or not, but it is by no means a requirement. It's just our version of it and listening to feedback. We've gone from metal to plastic back to metal, and it was all feedback from contractors. Hey, plastic's great, but I'm snapping them in cold weather. All right, that's legit. Can we beef it up? Can we So that's why we went back to metal. So when we were talking earlier, feedback, we love feedback. So you can tell if tape's been rolled. It's got about a 72-hour wet out period where it starts to ooze out and get into all the nooks and crannies. And after 72 hours and it's been rolled, and you could go up, you start flicking the edge of the tape. And if I can grab it and I can pull it and I've got a 3-foot piece that comes off like that, it wasn't rolled, or it was wet, or the backside of the tape's going to be covered with dirt and sawdust. If it had been rolled after 3 days, you're going to start stretching the tape. It's going to be very difficult to pull off. So it's a very easy sign to see if it's been rolled or not.
Heat gun on the tape too.
Oh, jeez. No, I mean, the tape is, the tape is actually an acrylic adhesive, right? So in the world of flashing tapes, it started out with asphalt-based tapes. Back, they would melt out in high temperatures and not stick in cold temperatures. And then butyl tapes got a little bit better. Temperature range got a little wider. But acrylics are now kind of that top of the line. All of our tapes are made by 3M. So if you're familiar with the 8067 tape from 3M, that's really the same as zip tape, but ours has a carbon black layer in it so that it can be exposed to the elements for 6 months. Most tapes are 3 months. So acrylic adhesives are really the most aggressive, and that's why we can go down to 0-degree temperature application with them. But all construction adhesives, whether you're using zip tape, 3M, Protecto Wrap, Tyvek tape, they all really are pressure sensitive. So rolling tape, no matter whose it is really part of what we should be doing. And we do this test a lot of times at shows and at demos like this, where we'll put a piece of tape on by hand and roll one. Basically, after a certain number, if you're sitting here an hour, you can even tell how much rolling the tape does actually make it kind of flow into the face of the zip panel. So, yeah.
Just staying on the tape thing. So as far as corners go,
Yeah.
Jackson Lumber, Russ, Mark, the one thing that I do want to see shipped to the sites now is a 6-inch tape for the corners and inside corners. I think the 3 inches has been a staple for a long time, but I would like the 6-inch going forward to be being put on the corners and inside corners, just to make sure that we have
in the windowsills too.
You remember many, many moons ago, we had a backer on the zip tape, and we had those guns that were massive that would reel up and they never worked. I mean, we've honestly have really tried to slim down the applicators needed for zip, because that was feedback we got, was like, no one is really using these wind up reels on old zip guns. So, so that's where we got down to this. Metal you can put it on your belt if you're going up and down a ladder. It's not as cumbersome. But we are all ears for thoughts on, maybe there's something rubber, maybe, if you guys have something that you've come across in the field that works better, by all means, let us know. Yeah. So 6-inch tape on the corners. This is going to be, I guess, for additional coverage, right? So you're going to end up with your other sheet of zip bar coming here with that 1 inch of foam exposed here. So previously, I think there's been 3 3/4 tape used, or maybe sometimes 2 layers of 3 3/4 tape, but you want to get coverage, 2 inches onto, this is why the hash marks are here on the edge of the panel. So, and 2 inches onto the zip overlay. So the 6-inch tape really is going to make this hopefully a lot easier for you guys. And I know it's common sense, but start at the bottom, has a length, and go up, so you're not reverse shingling as you tape.
Look like a raindrop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Hopefully the backer is easier for you guys on doing inside corners too, because then you can actually pinch the tape, and it does not have the split in the middle. But our 9 and 12-inch tapes do. But you can hopefully peel a side, and then, yeah.
Which funny is the split back launches a major discussion across the country. You think it's an easy thing. Yeah, 6-inch tape, split it at 3 inches. And then as you look at it across the country, don't split it on a 60/40. It was there was no consensus. just funny how it goes across the country.
One other thing to point out about the tape too is that this little bubble in the middle is not uncommon and it's not an issue. We've had people ask, well, how come this isn't laying completely flat? And through the cycle of the build, you'll notice probably hot days, this goes away, the panel expands, the panel contracts when it's cold. So the leading edge here is always going to be the most important, like Mike said, horizontal, this is what needs to really resist moisture. So leading edge, most important, but this, we're not as concerned with kind of the midpoint of the tape.
And the nice thing is our adhesive goes all the way to the edge. So if you start looking at like butyl-based tapes, there's a backer paper, and then I'm exaggerating, and then there's the butyl on it. So what happens with that is a lot of those manufacturers want you to treat with a sealant the north edge of it, because what happens is that creates a trough for water to come down and sit in the trough. By having our adhesive go all the way to the edge, because like we're talking about, we basically start with a wide band and we cut it down to 3 3/4, 6, 9, whatever we need for width. But then acrylic adhesive goes all the way to the edge. So when you put it on, roll it, we call it self-terminating. So, you know, water will shed on it. And if you get a rare instance where you've got a reverse lap, not overly worried about it because you got that self-termination. You know, if it's coming up and it's folded over and it's creating that trough for water to sit, yeah, then you want to address it. But if it's you know, you missed it and you've got 1 or 2 on a building, it's not the end of the world because of that being self-terminated. So.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, why don't you eliminate the backer on the 6-inch like that one? Because I watched you
That was
actually
gonna be my
struggle with
question.
getting the wrapper off and fighting
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
now
I watched
trying
that
to-
too.
Yeah, we could have 3M. We could have 3M make a linerless tape, but that is a good point in that if you are using zip system, you need to use zip products on all the seams, and that would include edges and corners. Yeah.
Yeah.
It would void our warranty because we only test our tapes to work with this. So, on Windows, it can be up to whatever the, you know, your prerogative is on Windows. We prefer to use the zip tapes because we know the acrylics aren't going to interact with nail flanges. That's another nice part about acrylic tapes. We realize they're a little more expensive, but you can use them in a wider temperature range and on all of the like vinyl window flanges. They're not going to interact and start to eat away at those. So there's just a higher level of comfort with that.
Or if you're going butyl, you know, below 40 degrees, generally you got to start looking at priming it. We go on a lot of job sites in the wintertime. I don't see a lot of primer going out. And then just trying to get it to stick. So another, somebody brought up it's a pain in the butt on inside corners. Another option I'll throw out there, because this came up on a job site years ago, how I learned about it. Again, listen to you guys that do this day in and day out that came up with the idea was liquid flash. Put a bead of liquid flash on each side of the corner, inside corner drywall tool, go down, and as long as you get about an inch, 1.5 inch coverage on each side of the corner, it's done, and then it's square as well. What you can run into with a tape, especially if somebody starts, you know, say it's a 2-story building, they start on the 2nd story with a roll of tape and they're trying to jimmy it in all the way down, as opposed to grabbing 2-3 foot pieces and starting at the bottom, tugging on it to ease it into the corner and going up. Then what happens is your tape gets rounded, and what you can run into is when the cider comes along, he can't get his starter, you know, if it's wood, he can't get his starter piece in, or if it's vinyl and he wants to put a J channel in, he's going to slice the tape, put his fill strip in, and then keep going. And then you just lost your air barrier and your WRB in one slice. So with a liquid flash, it's in there tight, it's fast. You know, it's a little more for material, but it's pretty quick.
Does that come in a copy? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The liquid flash is great. I've only used it in the large caulking tubes, and even in the summer, that doesn't come out very easy. It's in the winter, you really have to superheat it.
Usually I recommend doing small sections at a time, because if it's like really humid, it starts to set up. It's a moisture cure. So I was talking to somebody earlier, you know, you get those spring fall days where it's really dewy and drizzly and it's too wet to tape. Liquid flash is an option because it's a moisture cure. You know, if you really got to keep the project going, it's an option. So you, in one sweep, you could apply the liquid flash, and we really don't get into selling that piece, but they're, with the sausage guns, the noses are like replaceable. They look like a cookie gun sticking on cookies. I don't, but it looks like a old-fashioned sugar cookie gun.
But they have an applicator live.
Yeah. So it's, again, we don't sell them, but I've seen them at some supply houses in online and stuff like that, where they'll make it in like a paddle configuration just to make it that much easier.
Thought about something like a bingo dauber with this too. Like if you're just covering up a little, like, I mean, I don't know if it would flow. It's not quite as viscous enough in order to work like that. But we have, our innovation group is definitely hearing feedback from.
Oh, I can see all the framers carrying around bingo cards.
Here.
I can hear it on the job site too. Bingo!
But in the discussion of tape too, I know we are hearing you also on this bottom edge, trying to flash that somewhat down to the foundation, and we're working on specifically, really driven by you guys, is a tape that would adhere from the bottom edge of the zip R down underneath the foam part and then onto the foundation. That transition. So there's a tape coming hopefully in the next year that will address that pain point too, because we have had people use liquid flash there because this will cure to concrete. But it's oftentimes you can run it up the concrete, but then having it actually coat evenly on the bottom side of the zip R and on the foam is a little, and then definitely this can touch any of the Huber products really. You don't want to, if you have to sequence this with tape, you would rather put this over tape than have the tape try to cover the liquid flash.
And then I see issues with the imperfections in the foundation walls. No foundation wall is the same, and the adhesion of putting that panel down, and then as they're flipping the wall up, that tape actually touching the foundation is sometimes out of reach. Correct? Am I explaining that correctly? So I've seen things in the past where they've actually created a piece of metal that goes in a U fashion, and then you silicone the back of that, and then as the wall is stood up, then that seals it to that plate or whatever is there. So there's that's a future discussion, but let us know about the future of that and what that looks like.
Anytime that you're adding a piece, so this is your weather resistant barrier here being the zip, right? If you're adding either a piece of Advantech or solid sawn material here, if you were to oversize the windows and add rough framing here to really have your nailing bucks, if it's Advantech or even anything else, you really need to cover and continue this WRB into the opening. So that's what this detail goes with. Now, this is for making sure that you have a spot to nail the window into. Okay. And you don't currently put anything at the head. Is that correct? Okay. The WRB is coming down here. This would not need to necessarily be taped. But given that you've got these two pieces here, I'm going to say I think you probably want to end up taping along the top here.
As far as Chinburg Builder's installation method with the windows goes, obviously, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but we would send a bead of caulking along the entire perimeter of the window, except for the bottom. Except for the bottom, we always keep the bottoms open, and we don't tape the bottom so that if there is water back here, it does find its way out and about through there. So we would caulk the U-shaped fashion around the window, and then we would install the window, and then we would tape over the flanges of the window.
Tape, caulk, tape.
It doesn't have to be the 6-inch tape, but we would want it 2 inches onto the green and wrapped into.
So does everybody understand that? It's from here, 2 inches over, then go around.
It has to be 6 inches.
So, stretch tape.
Stretch tape. It was, like we discussed, acrylic adhesive, flexible backer. You want to go up 6 inches on each side, so cut it a foot longer than your rough opening. Everybody's got a different way of doing this. Since it was very windy in here, I decided to pull off all the tape because on those oceanfront homes, when it's a calm day, it's nice to have about a 3.5, 4 foot piece of tape in the wind trying to get it down. Some people like to roll it up and start and go across. Some people like to do what I did, where you just kind of drop it in, because you can kind of see it align. That way you don't get too wobber-jawed on it. So it's what works best for you. Generally, I like to work from the inside and then go out. Once you got it tacked up to the sides, just start folding it down in the middle. And when you get to the outside edge, just grab it and stretch.
There are little hash marks on the tape too for every 6 inches. So you can actually measure the window, add 2 extra hash marks for your 6-inch onto the jambs. And it's repositionable too. So like this little bubble down here can actually be pulled out. You still roll
Yep.
this one, yeah.
And then, like, if you got any saw kerf marks, make sure those are covered. That's a pathway for moisture to get in, for air to get in. Once it's in place, roll it. Generally, I wait till I'm all done with my tape and then just roll the whole, everything that I've got there for tape.
Exposed nail here. That will most likely end up getting covered by the flange.
By the flange of the
Yes.
window.
Yeah.
If you have a seam coming up here, you're going to want to tape that first, put this over it, basically doing your shingling. So, because if you use regular tape, then you're cutting bow ties and you're putting bow ties in the corner, and then you still have a potential pathway. You got pinholes in a corner, and the water would come down and basically sit where those pinholes potentially are. And another option with this is I like a one-piece monolithic sill pan. It's one piece, so when water hits this, it's shedding outside because we've got our tapered sill. It's pushing it outside. There's no real avenue for water to get behind this and defeat it.
As far as the sill pan goes, we're pretending right here that there is a clapboard here right now. The zip tape is now done, and we either do stretch tape all the way up in one piece, so that would go all the way around like this, or we come back after this part is completed and do a 2-part with this and or the 6-inch tape down 3 inches past this, correct?
Correct.
And rolled.
If you are trying to cover anything with the zip tape, so because we have gone to the backerless tape, there's now like a release agent on the face of the zip tape. So in order to install another product over it, it's usually a little bit of alcohol. We'll take that release agent off of the 3 3/4 tape. And we do say install per window manufacturer's written instructions. It's the responsibility of the installer to verify sealant compatibility. And we have a footnote. We have a tech tip, window and door sealant compatibility with zip system sheathing and accessories. So we can look into that tech tip a little bit deeper. But
And that
definitely
tech
start
tip
with
wasn't
Paradigm.
every sealant out there. We kind of, because there are so many different sealants out there, so we took what we thought was kind of the broadest base of sealants used across the country and tested it. So just because the sealant's not on the list, it may work. It's just we haven't tested it.
So,
Okay.
I think final answer is we're going to caulk along the top. We're going to 6-inch or stretch tape along the sides. We'll come out with an official statement of that shortly. And then we have the clapboard on the base and then stretch tape over that.
And stretch tape.
So for flashing, once we get the window, do you want to actually physically put this in and we'll flash?
really.
Or
Not
okay,
really.
okay.
No, I think we're pretty straightforward on that. We do the sides first and then the top, correct? So, and then we leave the bottom off. And
Yep.
everything is nailed per the manufacturer's specification along the windows. And we also, this isn't framed this way, but we also double jack all of our windows so that these nails actually hit a solid piece of wood behind here. And
Yeah, the corner tool has been retired. We don't have that anymore. It used to come in. You have if you still have them, hold on to them.
They work.
Um,
They meet your requirements for
Sticking?
sticky.
they would help like get into an inside corner. They'd help to actually get the tape in here. We do have these plastic little spatulas for the liquid flash that can help here too. I have some of those sticking around. You guys are welcome to those. But anything really that's going to get the tape in there into that corner, whether it's a speed square or our product or you know,
And you need like
you can definitely.
8-9 pounds of pressure on the tape. So it's not like putting your full back behind it. You just want good firm pressure. That way you get your adhesion onto it. Another thing we didn't touch on is if you've got, you and I were talking about this the other day,
Seam it.
if there's a seam above your window, We usually talk about top hatting it is the minimum because that seems now a high risk area. So you do tape your vertical, install your window. You'd run 3 3/4 inch across the top, but where that seam is, we'd want another piece on it further up so it'll look like an old fashioned top hat.
And that's on page 3 on these installation instructions is the detailing on when a seam comes down on top of the window.
So this is me personally. I'm a huge fan of 6-inch tape across the heads of windows.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of old housing stock in New England, and tough to be a GC nowadays that's never worked on an old house and dealt with water damage. Where do you see the water damage? Doors, windows, pipes, wires, decks. 6-inch, this isn't us trying to sell more tape. 6-inch above the head of a window, that's your high risk area because that's where the water comes in, is usually the top of the window. It's going to run down to the corners, and that's where you're going to see a rot on a rough opening. So by using 6-inch tape, you don't have to pay attention if there's a seam or not. Putting in windows, what I found, a lot of guys I talk to is they get in a groove. You know, you got a bunch of windows to put in, you just kind of get in your groove and you get your system down, and then you inevitably forget that there was a seam above a window. The lift's on the back side of the house. Now you got to remember, okay, later I got to put tape on that window. Inevitably, it doesn't get addressed and it gets missed. If you do 6-inch, you stay in your groove and it doesn't matter if the seam's there or not. And from a best practice standpoint or risk mitigation, it is really cheap insurance across the head of a window. Yeah, you would have this piece there, wherever the seam was.
6 inches up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the whole seam. This would be your seam. This would cover your seam.
When we build in the walls, you put this in.
Yep.
None of the plywood is here. You put this in before.
Yep.
So when I put my windows in, that I put my silicone in here.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the tape would be up. You run another 6 inches. If you're going to use the 6 inches tape here, do you run another one in the middle?
With a 6-inch, you don't have to worry about it. The 3 3/4, you'd have to do the 2. Good catch. So it eliminates. You could do the top hat or the 6-inch tape. I find it's just easier. Hit it with a 6-inch and be done.
And if there is a seam here,